We are all looking for a little shade. So here are the best plants for a beautiful shade garden is our gardening expert, Ferragine. Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Bring it in, brother.
There you go, sister.
Okay, so I love dealing with shade plants because they are, I don't know, are they easier? I find them a little bit easier, and we both know that I'm terrible with plants.
Yeah.
But I have a lot of
that.
shade. We all know that. A lot of shade in my front garden, and so we rely a lot on ferns, and I find that they last, which is great.
Yeah.
So what do you need to be thinking about if you have a shade garden?
Okay, first let's get a little shady and let's talk about shade itself. So what is shade? So shade is defined by at least 4 hours of getting some sort of light. So let's say that your house faces north, or you face east, or you're underneath a tree, you're getting dappled light, and or a little bit of that sunlight in the morning and or later in the day. That's generally shade to part shade. Sometimes you'll get this confusion with part shade as well. Think about it all as the same. Nothing grows in darkness. So if you're thinking about growing something underneath a dark deck, it's just not going to happen. I always say the only thing that grows in darkness is a mushroom or a fungi.
Yeah, that's it.
Bad joke.
Have a fungi garden.
But that's key, right? So first off, knowing what is shade and knowing that you indeed have shade, then we can go into plant selection.
Okay.
And you mentioned about ferns, and ferns are fantastic when it comes to plant selection for a shaded area. If we look at ferns in native areas, they're usually underneath trees on the forest floor. So there are so many different varieties as well. There's also a painted fern, I'm just going to show that one as well, that has a really nice unique foliage as well. Yeah. So even with ferns, you get that texture, you get that height, you get that drama, and with that you really start to create some interest. And that's the key with a shade garden. A lot of the times you're thinking all about flowers, but a lot of the times what we have to do is think about diversity of foliage. So look at this guy. What does that remind you of?
That's beautiful.
Yeah,
it's a little speckled.
Little speckled. This is lungwort, which is this one here is Dark Vader.
That's what it's called.
Yeah, this variety is called Dark Vader.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And you can see with the nice little splatter, it's almost like paint fell and splattered on there, but even that texture. So if we start working with these, and another reminder, using pastels and whites in shade are way better because they reflect light. Yes. So that'll really make it more welcoming.
Now here's my question for you. So you said there's shade and there's part shade.
Yes.
Will these plants specify which it needs, or can any of these plants be in full shade or part shade?
Majority of these can grow in part shade and in full shade. There are some varieties that will do better and more of a deep, darker shade. Yes. But I don't want people to confuse that with darkness. That's the key, right? Because you do need some light. Right. If you want to grab that plant that's right here, actually I'll grab one too. Yeah. If we're looking for a plant that's a ground cover, let's say that we're underneath a tree and we need something that's going to be a little bit better for dry shade. Now all of a sudden I'm using this word dry shade. Well, dry shade is where it's underneath that tree, and that tree's bullying, taking all that moisture away. This is what's called periwinkle or vinca minor. This is unbelievably good as a ground cover underneath a tree once you get it established. It takes some time to establish. It'll take 3 to 4 years before it fills in. Once it fills in, you can cut it with a lawnmower, you can run over it. Really? Your dog can go into it. Yeah. It's super, super, super easy.
So does this get out of control though? Because some ground cover, I mean, it will take over your garden.
Vinca minor, which is periwinkle, not that bad, but this guy over here, it's pretty. It's called a juga, but also its nickname is bugleweed.
Why? Oh, well, first of all, the weed part of it is an indication it's going to take over, right?
So this is a great ground cover in shade that if it's not left contained can go all over the place. It's like that bad friend that just comes over and keeps on going all over the place where you don't want it to go.
Yeah, no boundaries. So that can serve a purpose if you are looking for a ton of ground cover and you want something that's going to be easy and really pervasive. If that's what you're looking for, go for that.
And if you want to suffocate some weeds out, you want to go for that. Probably the #1 plant for the shade garden, and there are so many different varieties, which is hostas.
Yeah, they're nice.
And the thing about hostas is they come in so many different sizes. There's one that's called bunny ears. It's very, very short. There's another one called Big Daddy. Yeah. Big Daddy has a huge leaves. They're sub in substance, the variegated foliage, the flowers. Some of them are fragrant. There's so much. You could just have a hosta collection, and many people are hosta collectors.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they'll have them all in their garden with their different sizes and foliages. So even just a hosta garden in shade, and hostas do well in dry shade. Sometimes you'll even see some varieties of hostas almost in full sun. Those hosta varieties Are usually a little bit more the blue leaf tones that can do a little bit better in sun.
Right. Now, you and I were both in St. Lucia this year,
yes.
and you must have just been going crazy over the foliage there.
Oh.
When you talk about the big hostas, the leaves were this big, and because there's so much foliage and so much greenery, some of it's in shade, some of it's in sun. The ferns are like humongous. Yeah. It's so beautiful. And that's I think the bolder the leaf, the more beautiful the plant.
I agree.
It's just gorgeous.
With hosta, like that one variety, Big Daddy, that leaf, even here in North America, can grow huge. So you don't need that tropical environment, but it creates that tropical look.
It does.
And you can actually even take the leaves and you can put them in concrete, and you can even make a leaf, little patio slab out of it as well, that people will do as well.
That's cute.
So,
one thing I want to mention, shade for most of us thinks everything is going to be green. No, you can have some color in your shade plants. What is that white one there?
That's astilbe. So the astilbe that you see in the background there is a beautiful shade plant that'll do well. My favorite variety of astilbe is one called astilbe Sprite. A little bit more flower period, a little bit longer lasting flowers, but you can integrate some flowers in there. And then as well, this one right here, I'm going to grab them, I'm just going to slide in here. This one here is Solomon's seal. It does put a bloom on it as well. It grows nice and tall. A lot of the times you'll find this in native areas as well, just growing on its own. Yeah. But this has a nice fragrant flower as well. So there's so much diversity that you can have out there with shady spaces that you don't have to be limited. And then another one, if you're looking for something with a flower, this has a flower, but also just wonderful foliage. This is coral bells. Okay. And coral bells come in such a wide array of foliage color and flower as well that you can get really excited. I get excited about plants.
I know you do, honey.
I do.
I know you do.
I do. Like,
loves it.
I'm like, these are damn sexy.
They're sexy. Just like you. Now, is there a challenge? Is there a big challenge when it comes to growing a shade plant? Is there anything that we're doing wrong or we should do less of? Does it need less water, more water?
So pay attention. If you're underneath a tree, you're going to look for dry shade. So dry shade, we already went through Vinkemeyer, which is periwinkle, hosta. If you're in a shaded area that has a little bit more wet feet, so all of a sudden that's a bog plant. That's a shade plant for bog. So astilbes will do better for that. Sometimes just knowing the plant and the type of soil and the environment that you have, selecting that plant makes it easy. If you have the right plant for the right place, you don't need to do work.
Right, okay. That's what we need to do. Read labels and figure that out. Frankie, thank you so much for that.